Halloween Horror Nights is upon us in both Orlando and in Hollywood. And of course, with the speculation season now complete, now comes anticipation season. So what houses are you most excited for? Well, we're going to tell you ours coming up right now. What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Exploring Attractions. My name is Scott, and you're watching your stop for all things theme park and attraction related. If you're new here, consider subscribing down below with those bell notifications on. You can check out our official website, www.exploringattractions.com, and you can find merch and social media down below in the description. That's right, everyone. I know you guys have been asking for it, so it's finally upon us, our Halloween Horror Nights 2022 anticipation list for both Orlando and Hollywood. And we're strictly talking about haunted houses, no scare zones, no terror tram, no shows, no any of that. That stuff is a little bit harder to kind of rank, so we're only doing haunted houses. And before I get into the video, you guys are going to want to make sure that you have those bell notifications on because we got something exciting coming up this week. I'm not going to say what day yet, but we're actually taking a behind the scenes tour of some of the haunted houses at Horror Nights Hollywood. So that's going to be an exciting video to post. I believe we're only allowed to take pictures, so obviously we'll have commentary over it, but I'm not going to say what day it is, so you guys will just all be surprised. That's going to be very exciting to do. But without further ado, let's get into our list. And keep in mind, these are just my opinions, so if you have different lists, just let me know down below in the comments section. I'd love to see everyone's kind of various different lists, whether it be for the East Coast or the West Coast. We're kicking things off with Orlando, of course, and we're starting from the bottom, number 10. At number 10, I have The Horrors of Blumhouse featuring Freaky and the Black Phone. The reason why I have it so low is because obviously there's not the greatest track record with Blumhouse houses on either coast. But, you know, it could be good. I'm not going to say that. I don't want to say that any house is bad before I walk through it. So keep in mind the lower ones on these lists, I'm not saying they're going to be bad. I'm just saying I'm not expecting it to compete with some of the top 3 houses. So Blumhouse comes in at my number 10 for Orlando. Number 9 goes to Halloween. Now, Halloween, I'm a big sucker for Michael Myers. However, we have seen this house in the past before, so I don't think it's going to be anything different. I mean, same with the Hollywood. Some of the returning ones are in a lower tier just because we've seen them before and I'm more anticipated. Like, this is an anticipation list, anticipated for the newer houses. Number 8 goes to Hell Block Horror. Now, there is a lot of speculation on whether or not this was a last-minute replacement. I'm not too sold on the theme quite yet. I think it's going to be awesome to see some of the monsters that we've seen in past Horror Nights events in Orlando in this sort of prison and then them all coming to attack you. So it's going to be kind of like a collaboration house between monsters from years past. But I'm not too sold on the theme quite yet. I will be 100% sold when I walk through it or at least see some of the maze highlights before I'm able to attend. Number 7 goes to Spirits of the Coven, the kind of Roaring 20s themed house. I'm excited for this one because we've seen at different haunt events, especially like Knott's Scare Farm has really kind of gone into this Roaring 20s theme, and I think that it fits perfectly with the scare zone there. So I think that something like this will translate perfectly into a house, especially since it's Universal behind it. I don't think that this house will be lacking anything as far as what they're trying to create with the theme of the 20s and then this dreaded speakeasy, which I'm extremely excited about. Number 6 is going to go to Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Now, we've seen them do Universal Monsters houses in the past, and they all come out absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to walk through Legends Collide. I think seeing the Mummy, Dracula, and the Wolfman all come together is going to be absolutely insane, especially with it being in the Parade Building. Once again, they had Universal Monsters in the Parade Building. Bride of Frankenstein Lives was in a sound stage, but I think that in a Parade Building, it works a little bit better for Universal Monsters. And we do know that the storyline kind of fits with Hollywood's, like one storyline is completely different from the other one, as explained by Murdy, the creative director of Halloween Horror Nights Hollywood, in his Midsummer Scream panel. So I think that's a cool aspect, especially if you're going to both events like myself. And number 5 is Bugs Eaten Alive. Now, Bugs Eaten Alive is it's going to be a disgusting house. I talked about before when we did our announcement video that I'm not even sure if I'll be able to walk through this. Like, I'll just have to mentally prepare myself. I am not terrified of bugs, but I do find bugs to be disgusting and just gnarly. And obviously, after listening to the Discover Universal podcast, I just want to say, like, my rankings have changed a little bit after listening to that podcast. I threw up one on Twitter before even listening to that show, but now after listening to that show, they're a little bit different. But Bugs Eaten Alive is going to be such a gnarly house, and I think that it's going to have a lot of people wanting to leave it early with everything that they're describing. To Descendants of Destruction, the subway station that will encounter different creatures throughout it. I think that this is going to be a sleeper house. I think it'll be an underdog. I don't think anyone's expecting this to be as amazing as the top two would be, but I do think that this is going to be an underdog house. I think that we'll see a lot of stuff and a lot of set design that we're not expecting in Descendants of Destruction, and that's why I'm super excited about it. I think it's the least talked about house as far as anticipation goes, so I'm putting it at number 4 because I think it's going to be the underdog house of the year. Number 3 goes to The Weeknd After Hours Nightmare. Global pop star The Weeknd has obviously made his path into Halloween Horror Nights, and there's been lots of debate on speculation season on whether or not they can pull something like this off. However, I do think that especially with Orlando, they're going to pull off such a unique kind of, I don't know, let's say technology-based house. Like, I think there will be a lot of different effects in this between projection and just different stuff that we're not expecting at all, that this house will be phenomenal. We've seen what they can do with different lighting in the parade buildings already. I mean, prime example with the Graveyard Games, there's different lighting effects in there that were absolutely insane for our parade building. So I think that with The Weeknd After Hours Nightmare, they can definitely pull some stuff off with this as well. And it's so high on my list for Orlando because Orlando never fails to disappoint when it comes to set design, and I think that this house will heavily rely on set design rather than the scary aspect. Number 2, Dead Man's Pier Winter Wake. Now, we've seen Dead Man's before in a scare zone, and that's why it's so high on my list, because every time they seem to do a sequel to a scare zone or a different house, it comes out absolutely phenomenal. So I think Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake is going to be one of those prime examples. I think anything with a kind of seaside theme to it just works so well. You don't expect it to work well, but it does. When you see an undead fisherman coming at you and all these different aspects of the house, it's going to work out really good, and that's why it's so high on my list. But of course, my most anticipated Halloween Horror Nights 31 in Orlando house is going to go to Chupacabras. I think that this is going to be absolutely insane. Like, first of all, when I heard that they're going to do a Chupacabras maze, I was like, wow, I'm so excited for that. Coming from a Mexican family and hearing about all these urban legends, I think that it's going to be, one, I'm going to live out my fears as I had as a kid, and number 2, it's just such a unique theme. Like this is another one that went higher on my list after listening to the podcast that they put out, because they described it as it being a fiesta, hence the name Fiesta de Chupacabras, and them not so much celebrating with you, but them wanting to use you as a sacrifice for the Chupacabra. I just think that theme and storyline is such a unique and creative storyline that I think that this house is going to be awesome. Alright everyone, but let's move into my Hollywood most anticipated list for haunted houses this year, and with number 8 we have Halloween. Now, we saw Halloween, this version of it, in 2015, and let me just say, it was such an amazing house to walk through back then. Like, when he came back after his hiatus in 2015, it was such an awesome house. There was so much that they did in the Persian courtyard, and I had such a great time in it, especially the ending scene with all the different mirrors and everything. I thought that was awesome. This year, I think it'll be the exact same. I think there will be some surprises along the way, but like I said with my Orlando speculation, some of the returning houses are a little bit lower just because we've seen them before. Number 7 goes to The Horrors of Blumhouse featuring The Black Phone and Freaky. Now, I've seen both of the films already, and I think that Freaky has a lot more content for them to work with in this. I definitely think Freaky will be a lot bigger of a setting in this house. However, there's nothing really terrifying in there other than the kills. What's terrifying is the grabber in The Black Phone. His mask, the different masks that he used throughout that film are absolutely terrifying. So it's kind of interesting, right? Because with The Black Phone, there's obviously probably not going to be a lot of scenes since it does take place in one setting, but it has the scariest thing. With Freaky, there's going to be tons of different scenes that they can bring to life. However, there's nothing really terrifying other than what we see from the butcher in the very beginning. Number 6 goes to Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Definitely one of my top 5 houses of all times I've been through since attending Horror Nights back in 2010. And I think that Killer Clowns from Outer Space will very much be a great house like it was in 2019. However, Murdy did say it's a straight redo, so I can't put it too high compared to all the new houses, and that's just my opinion. I will still love it. It'll still stay true to one of my top houses that I've ever been through, but just with the other competing houses, it's going to go at number 6. And number 5 is the Universal Horror Hotel, a theme that was teased at Midsummer Scream. Also something that had speculation on it being a last minute replacement. I'm curious to see what they do with the Walking Dead show building. I have heard rumors that it is completely different in there. The layout is completely different, and you wouldn't even expect that you're in the Walking Dead building, which makes sense because that attraction was technically supposed to close a long time ago, but then they opened it up for Horror Nights last year. So I think that Universal Horror Hotel will be the underdog houses here. I think that there's a lot of exciting things in there. Just from them connecting kind of the concept art to this storyline alone, and my friend HHN Mannix did a great breakdown about this on Twitter. I think that them thinking about the storyline of the Horror Hotel, there's a lot more elaborate stuff in there than we're expecting. So it'll be interesting to see how the Horror Hotel shapes out to be, how it's going to fit in the Walking Dead location, because that essentially is kind of like a soundstage in a way. I think that's similar to a parade building in Orlando. Number 4 goes to the Weekend After Hours Nightmare. I do think that Orlando will have the edge in their weekend house, just like I said, because they're so amazing at doing set design and everything. Not that Hollywood isn't. However, I think that this house will shock a lot of people that weren't expecting it to be great, and it actually is great. The way that they're bringing his kind of nightmares to life and After Hours Nightmare is going to be so cool, and Murdy did do a deep dive into it on him talking about it and him bringing the Weeknd's ideas to life. He even said it in our interview that the Weeknd has worked hand in hand between seeing every creature to every elevation picture. He's worked hand in hand with them, so that's what makes me so excited for this house. Number 3 goes to Universal Monsters Legends Collide. Universal Monsters is a little bit higher on my list for Hollywood because Murdy does not disappoint when it comes to Universal Monsters houses. We've seen already 3 great Universal Monster houses that he's put on, and I do not think that this one will be a disappointment like those other 3 weren't either. The Bride of Frankenstein Lives, also one of my top 5 houses of all times. Amazing. Universal Monsters, so many favorites of people of number 1 of all time in 2018. And of course you have the Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which was also such a great house as well. Well, now we have the Mummy, Dracula, and the Wolfman all coming together, fighting for this amulet of Ra. And honestly, I just can't wait for Legends Collide. I think from seeing the facade alone, that should make you even more excited for it because they have put so much detail into the facade, and I'm sure that detail translates well into the actual house experience. Alright, number 2, so high on my list is La Llorona. This is my all-time favorite Halloween Horror Nights house that I've ever been through at the event. I think that it is going to be terrifying, just as it was in 2012 and 2011. Murdy has promised that there is going to be the same amount of disturbing scares in there. He even gave a teaser of what to expect from it, just showcasing some of the props and some of the puppets that they use. Just from my memory alone, walking through this is absolutely terrifying. Like, if you are first going to Horror Nights, then I highly recommend you do not start off with this one because It's disturbing. Some of the scenes are disturbing in there, but if you know the urban legend and you know the myth, then I highly recommend you check this out first, because this house is not a disappointment. It is such a great house just from walking through it, and I can't wait to see, with all the updated stuff that they have, how they have brought it even better to life. That just sentence made no sense, but how they have brought it to life even better compared to how they did in 2012 and 2011. But number one is the house that started construction very, very early and is still getting stuff added to it as we speak. Scarecrow the Reaping. We saw this house in Orlando before, and obviously we know the full storyline that's going to go into Scarecrow the Reaping thanks to John Murdy at Midsummer Scream. He talked a lot about how the Dust Bowl had a huge influence on it. He even showcased some of the characters, or actually like all of the characters, the full cast, but some of the new characters that we can expect compared to Orlando's version. Of course, King Crow, he's going to be a stilt walker in this house, and he's even on the kind of key art for the logo of Scarecrow the Reaping. This house is going to be absolutely detailed and absolutely insane. Just seeing the facade alone and seeing the fact that they're adding more and more to it as we speak. Like I said, they're adding vines to it. There's so much that they have added into this house and into the facade alone that I cannot wait to see, because we have followed this construction progress for the longest time, from when it was just a tent to then a maze layout to then actual vertical plywood, and then we all obviously track the facade of it. Nobody knew what it was. Lots of people were speculating that it was Scarecrow. Scarecrow comes in at number one for Hollywood. Chupacabras comes in at number one for Orlando, and I want to know what's your guys' anticipation list down below in the comments section. Like I said, if you're going to both, let me know both. If you're only going to one, let me know one. Let me know down below what you guys are most excited for Halloween Horror Nights this year. Anyways, everybody, my name is Scott, and you've been watching Exploring Attractions. Positivity is key, and most importantly, remember to keep exploring. Peace out, everybody.